Welcome back, me hearties. I am the ever-charming space pirate, Dr. Disaster, and today we're going to continue our plundering of the Disney Star Wars franchise. If you want to peek at someone who is at the height of desperation, who's throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks, look no further than Kathleen Kennedy. Not because I think she's going to be fired or anything. Disney has proven itself completely inept at identifying her as the main culprit behind the problems at Star Wars. No, I think she's desperate to protect her legacy, because image is everything to these Hollywood groupthink types. And to that end, she's seemingly trying an interesting tactic. You see, with Star Wars, it's like someone farted in the room, and Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm tried blaming it on the fans. They said the stench comes from us and our terrible no-good bigotry. And when that didn't work, when it turned out they didn't have the receipts for their claims of our bigotry, well, they tried pretending instead that the fart smelled wonderful. They acted like everyone loved the sequels, and they did things like build their Galactic Star Cruiser hotel around that era of Star Wars, but many people dislike that garbage, and of course, it never occurred to them to do the correct thing and simply apologize or laugh it off as an oopsie. That's what you're supposed to do when you make a big stink in the room. But now, it seems they're trying to do what insufferable wokesters always do with their bad ideas when called out. They're trying to intellectualize it. We're going to look at some comments Kennedy recently made and take a look at their approach as a company to the upcoming Rey film that absolutely nobody wants. And I'm going to back up my claim that nobody wants this crap with even more evidence of their failure. This one is hilarious, so stay tuned. I can't wait to see what y'all think of it.
I have a really bad feeling about this.
Alright, we're going to start this off by taking a look at this article from Bounding Into Comics. Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy says upcoming Rey film will question, does the galaxy need the Jedi anymore? Do they want them back? Kennedy appeared on Entertainment Weekly's Dagobah Dispatch, where she first reiterated much of the talking points she shared about the film at Star Wars Celebration. She said, well, as we move into the future space, which this story is about 15 years outside of Rise of Skywalker, obviously we realize that post-war, post-First Order, Rise of the New Jedi Order, we left Episode 9 with Rey making a commitment to Luke Skywalker that she would rebuild the Jedi Order, and so here we are. We are ready to do that. It is so frustrating, as an aside, to see them trying to do what they always should have done with Luke Skywalker. It's frustrating to see Rey taking his role as the primary Jedi heroic character that we always loved with Luke for, decades while we were waiting in between films. I remember being a child, being a little kid, because I was born in the 80s. I remember, being so excited that I was always determined that someday George Lucas was going to write an episode 7, 8, and 9. I always believed that. I always thought I was going to see Luke Skywalker on the theater screen. But of course, I was utterly disappointed with all of it. I was completely turned off by the whole thing. It's frustrating, though, to see Rey taking the position he always should have had, that he had in the extended universe novels. Why couldn't they just do this with Luke? They had an absolute goldmine waiting for them. And it's not like, I know some people are going to go, well, Mark Hamill is, of course, by the time they bought Disney Star Wars, he was, in his 60s, 70s, whatever, I'm not certain how old he is, I haven't looked that up, but, he was an older guy by the time Star Wars came out, so maybe their thinking was, we have to move on to somebody new that we can make a lot of, a lot of new content surrounding someone like Daisy Ridley, but I guess I have a hard time believing that's the problem when, Force Awakens came out. A year after that, we got a de-aged Princess Leia in Rogue One. And, a few years after that, we get a de-aged Luke Skywalker in The Mandalorian. The technology was there. The technology was there, or at the very least, for the love of God, if you have to do it this way, don't do Luke Skywalker dirty like you did in the sequel trilogy. But I digress. The article continues. And it took a lot of discussion because obviously we've been developing stories in different spaces and television has been a big focus of our attention right now. But there's still so much interest in what happens after Rise of Skywalker, so we are excited to be doing that now, she concluded. This is where I really have a lot of contention. I'm going to take a lot of contention with everything she said here. First of all, we've been focused on television. That's their big focus of attention right now. She makes that sound as though that was their plan all along. Well, after Rise of Skywalker, we're going to really focus on doing TV stuff. I mean, we've covered this before ad nauseum, but it bears repeating. The reason that they weren't doing movies anymore is because they weren't making any damn money. They would have been perfectly happy to put out 1 or even 2 movies a year if we were going to them, if we were going and buying the tickets. But we aren't. They're focusing on television because they were forced to. They retreated to television. And I think they were encouraged by the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian. And I'm certain, they made the announcement at Star Wars Celebration that all these new movies are being greenlit. But they would have done that. They would have greenlit those movies before season 3 of Mandalorian came out. And I'm very interested to know what they actually think at the in the upper echelons of Disney about the chances of these new movies doing well in light of season 3 of Mandalorian being so poorly received. This is really bad. They don't have anything going for them. And then, of course, now in the wake of them having to admit that the Galactic Star Cruiser was an absolute boondoggle. And then I also take issue with this line here, there's still so much interest in what happens after Rise of Skywalker. No there isn't. No there isn't, and I have the receipts. Alright, so if we take a look at this Google Trends chart, over on the left, we've got Star Wars The Force Awakens being searched for a bunch of times in 2015 when that film first came out. And then the little dip in red to the right represents The Last Jedi being searched for in 2017 when that film came out. Still a lot of interest, but, a lot less than The Force Awakens. And then we take a look at Avengers Infinity War in 2018, that green spike right next to The Last Jedi. And take a look at how Avengers Infinity War in green shoots up to this massive spike in purple just to the right of that. That's Avengers Endgame. Now, I would contend that Endgame is nowhere near as good as Infinity War, but people were very excited with Infinity War, of course. And people were very excited to see Endgame. Endgame was tremendously successful because Avengers Infinity War was so good. And then, that tiny little thing over on the right here in blue, that's Rise of Skywalker. Rise of Skywalker dipped big time. Why is that, do you think? The trends were completely opposite. This is, this jump from green to purple. That's what, that's Avengers Infinity War to Avengers Endgame. That's what happens when people are actually excited about a new project. And then you look at The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi and then Rise of Skywalker. That's what happens when people gradually no longer give a rat's ass. And I will admit, just in the interest of being intellectually honest, I will admit that, Star Wars The Force Awakens was always destined to just be this amazing event. Of course, it was always destined to be this big thing that people were excited about. So I'm not even gonna gloat over this, jump or rather drop from Force Awakens to The Last Jedi, but I will, however, point out that it's not good then to go from The Last Jedi, which was supposed to be, the second film in a trilogy is always supposed to be like this cliffhanger thing that gets people really excited, that gets people really, their blood pumping to see the next one. Imagine what that chart would have looked like if we could go back to the 70s and 80s, if Google existed back then, and see what the search history would have been going from Empire Strikes Back to Return of the Jedi. You want more evidence that this is unique to Star Wars and that the second film should lead to more interest in the third film? Take a look at this Google Trends chart here. Pirates of the Caribbean. The 2006 film, Dead Man's Chest, that was the second film in their original trilogy. That is the blue spike. That's 2006 when that film came out. And then look at that. The red spike exceeds the blue spike, meaning people were more excited. They were searching up at World's End more than they searched up Dead Man's Chest. What do you think the difference is with Star Wars and these other films that people actually were excited for? But let's continue here. Later in the podcast, Kennedy was asked about the announced James Mangold film that is expected to go back to the distant past and tell the tale of the first Jedi to wield the Force and harness it as a liberating power in an era of chaos and oppression. She said, "We've been talking a lot about going well into the past, and one of the things that's really knitting this all together, obviously, are the Jedi. What happened with the Jedi over time? Much like history. And how did the Jedi evolve? They were wiped out with Order 66, then they gradually have been coming back. The question that we're going to ask with New Jedi Order and with Rey is, does the galaxy need them anymore? Do they want them back?" So there's a lot of food for thought in what we're doing, whether it's in the past, present, or future. Now, we're trying to intellectualize it. People don't care, actually. I know she's talking about, do the people within the story want the Jedi back? She's not talking about whether we want the Jedi back, but I'm going to talk about that. No, I don't want them back, at least not in this form. I don't care anymore, and I don't think anybody does. And I don't think, as I say, trying to ask these provocative sounding questions is going to draw anybody back in. When you fart in the room, you don't go, well, actually, I think the history of farts suggests that perhaps they don't even want them back anymore. Well, no shit. Nobody wants this back. It's garbage. And then she went on to confirm that the iconic Star Wars crawl would return for the Rey-centric movie, saying, "The crawl's coming back, the crawl's coming back." And when pressed on whether it was just for the Rey film, she added, "No, the crawl is for the movies." Well, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't think I really even care one way or another. I don't care about any of this. I just don't care. This is going to be a woke failure. This is going to be the... Luke Skywalker, as I said before, always should have been given the opportunity to train a new Jedi Order. He should have been given the opportunity to have a story, similar to Heir to the Empire. He should have been given the opportunity, but we were deprived of that. And in his place, they are putting out this garbage series of characters that none of us can be bothered to even do a Google search for. Thanks for watching, me hearties. If you haven't already, your captain is inviting you to subscribe to the channel and become a part of the crew. Life as a space pirate may not be glamorous, but there's always plenty of booty.